After 7 months of delays, the long-awaited first DLC chapter for Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is finally here. The Marisa story expansion has arrived. Anyone who has watched my previous Eiyuden Chronicle videos will know that I thoroughly enjoyed the game, having put over 350 hours into it across 3 different playthroughs. But you'll also know that I've been very critical of the game's many problems and shortcomings. When the DLC released yesterday, I was more than happy to jump back into the game and spend some more time with the characters and world that I grew to love. So was the wait worth it, and did it live up to expectations? Let's find out. The Marisa chapter serves as a prequel, telling us the story of how Marisa, Lean and Nil met and became friends. Yet despite being a prequel, it's only accessible and playable after you've completed the penultimate war battle and recaptured the city of Eltisvice, which is at the very end of the game. By this point in the game, your characters are all going to be very highly leveled and well equipped with the best rune lenses, the best armors and their weapons maxed out. This is a big problem because despite being a prequel, the DLC retains your character's levels and equipment from your endgame save file. This created a very unenjoyable experience for me, as all of my characters were one-shotting every enemy and I never took any more than 5 damage, even from the boss. So what happened here? The DLC content was clearly not balanced for endgame character levels and equipment, yet the DLC is not accessible until you've reached the end of the game. As the DLC is a prequel, it should have started with predetermined levels and equipment to ensure that everybody could experience the DLC how it was intended to be. But the poor balance of the DLC chapter aside, how is the story, how is the gameplay, is it what was promised? Story-wise, the DLC doesn't really reveal much of anything new that you didn't already know from playing the base game. The DLC begins with Marisa exploring an unnamed rune barrows where she's tracking a group inside the runes. There she stumbles across Lean, who is also pursuing the same group, which is being led by the antagonist of the DLC, a man called Gosshoster, who is a member of the Conclave of the Dawn. Marisa and Lean then stumble across Nil within the runes and the trio team up with some other familiar faces to defeat Gosshoster. I won't say any more or I'll spoil the story, except to say that the antagonist is a bland, boring and forgettable character who came and went without any real impact on the overall story. The majority of your time in the DLC will be spent sitting back watching cutscenes as the trio develop their friendship, and for those of us who are hoping that the DLC would explore a little deeper into the Guardians and the Rune Barrows, you're out of luck, as the remainder of your time will be spent running through the narrowest of corridors as you collect blue orbs to open doors, so that you can run through more narrow corridors to collect more blue orbs to open another door, and so on. There are a few new enemies in the DLC to fight against. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be one-shotting them all, which takes the fun out of fighting them. Some of the new enemies appear in the Great Wood, but you'll be spending less than a minute actually running through the Great Wood, so I'd be surprised if you actually even encountered them. As for the length of the DLC, the developers revealed last year during an Ask Me Anything on Reddit that the DLC chapters would take between 2 to 3 hours each to complete. Unfortunately, that's not the case, as I finished the Marisa chapter in barely over an hour, and that was with me pacing myself and going as slowly as I possibly could. Many people in the official Eiyuden Discord server also reported finishing the DLC in an hour. Again, I have to ask, what happened here? That is significantly shorter than the length which was initially promised. Not only is the DLC incredibly short, it also ends so abruptly that you're left sitting there wondering, wait, that's it? And when I say abruptly, I mean the moment the boss is defeated, the DLC ends and it cuts back to your castle. As I mentioned earlier, I have over 350 hours in Eiyuden Chronicle across 3 different playthroughs, 400 hours if you include Rising. I wouldn't put that much time into something unless I loved it. I don't want to be this negative, and I don't like being this negative, but if this is the quality that we're to expect from the remaining 2 DLC chapters, then it's not a good sign of what's to come. Overall, I found the Marisa chapter to be a very underwhelming and disappointing experience, with the whole thing being poorly made and poorly planned. Truthfully, this feels like it should have been part of the base game. The DLC being priced at $7.99 is a very tough ask. It's extremely overpriced for the little amount of content that's provided, and I struggle to recommend it even to the most diehard of Eiyuden fans. If you really want to play this DLC chapter, I'd strongly recommend waiting for a steep discount. But in truth, you could simply watch a playthrough of it on YouTube and you'd experience the exact same thing as the person playing it, as the whole DLC is nothing more than cutscenes and running through narrow corridors. Luckily, I backed this game on Kickstarter way back, so I got this DLC for free. But if I hadn't backed the Kickstarter and I had spent $7.99 on this chapter, I wouldn't just be disappointed, I'd be annoyed and I'd feel ripped off. Unfortunately, there's just not enough content in this story expansion to make it worth the price, and for what is offered, the price is exorbitant. Have you played the Marisa DLC chapter yet? What do you think of it? Am I being too harsh? Or if you haven't played it yet, are you waiting for all 3 DLC chapters to release to play them all together? Let me know your thoughts below. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.